Welcome to A Healthier, Happier You, the people working to make it happen. I'm Evan J. Charlton from Luxhammer, where we help the brands to help you live healthier. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Amy Beckley, founder and CEO of Proov, who's transforming how women understand and manage their hormonal health through groundbreaking at-home testing solutions. Amy, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, your personal journey to founding Proov is powerful. Can you share the story if you're uh, up for it today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am probably a very typical a woman. Tried to get all her ducks in a row. So did everything right. On birth control for a long time. Met my husband when I was 24. Got married at 26. Bought a nice house in a nice neighborhood and saved up to have kids. Thought actual having kids would be easy. It was not. I couldn't get pregnant, and when I could get pregnant, I would lose the pregnancy, and it was not great. I'm also a scientist, and so I think that was just extra frustrating because every time I would go to the doctor, it was, "Well, you haven't been trying long enough, or you haven't had enough miscarriages, or you're still young, or we don't know what's wrong." They'd run tests, and they would just get nowhere. I ultimately turned to IVF. They told me basically, "We don't know what's wrong, so you have to do IVF." I did 2 rounds of IVF. I finally had my son, who is now 15. But then after that, I went back and talked to my doctor more about why could I not get pregnant naturally? But IVF worked, and it turned out that I had just a simple hormone imbalance, and there was no test that could test for what was wrong with me. And I said, "Oh, that sounds like a really good opportunity for someone to make a test." And so we never really understood women's hormones. We just said, "Oh, are you having regular periods? You must be ovulating. You must have enough hormones to support a pregnancy." And we were just didn't know a lot of the science. And so I built Proov to help prove what women's hormones were doing. It's a simple at-home test that measures hormones, and we can see, are you making enough estrogen? Do you make enough progesterone? Are you timing intercourse right? Do you have enough eggs? Are they ovulating healthy? Do you have enough hormones to support a pregnancy? And so we're trying to answer all these questions, and really help women have knowledge about their bodies so they can either get help sooner, get the right help, but definitely not go through 7 miscarriages and 3 years infertility like I did, because it was not fun.
Can only imagine. I mean, that's very difficult to go through, and I'm glad that you were able to figure that out. That's takes a lot of time and energy and a lot out of you. So I'm glad that you were able to get through all that. So I'm curious, just as from a science background, what made you focus specifically on PDG testing?
So for me, IVF is a procedure that basically you mature a bunch of eggs and then they retrieve them, they fertilize them outside in a lab, and then they implant them. And then they give you a bunch of progesterone hormone to help support the pregnancy. And that whole procedure worked. And after I had my son, I went back to the doctor and I was like, "Why'd this work?" And I couldn't do it by myself. And we just started dissecting all these things. And I said, "What if I'm just not making enough progesterone hormone to support a pregnancy?" And he's like, "Well, we don't really know. We have this blood test that measures progesterone, but your ovary produces progesterone in pulses. And so within like a day, it could be high, it could be low. It really doesn't tell us that you have a healthy amount of progesterone to do what you need to do." And I said, "Oh, it sounds like you need to measure them multiple times over a longer period of time to just really understand is the output, a good output." And so what a PDG test is, it's the urine metabolite of progesterone. And so you just measure it multiple times in urine. So once a day for 4 days after ovulation. And it tells you, do you have high enough levels? Are they sustained long enough? And so basically what was happening with me is my progesterone was just dropping too soon. And it didn't give enough time for that fertilized embryo to go down the fallopian tube and implant in the uterus before I'd have my next period. And so I was just getting missed on all the blood tests because they're like, "Yeah, you have progesterone, you're ovulating, you're producing eggs." But I just wasn't making it long enough. And so what our test does is it just scans a longer period of time. Is it long enough? Is it balanced by the amount of estrogen? And so we're really just bringing more like advanced analytics. And, we never could measure hormones at home like this. So I think the missing piece is of understanding it's not really about timing of intercourse, it's everything else, right? You need to time it, you need to fertilize it, it needs to implant, like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So the FDA clearance for your tests in 2020 was groundbreaking. What did the milestone mean for you?
I get asked a lot is, well, Amy, why hasn't this thing been invented a long time ago? And it was something to the effect of nobody thought women needed this information. And so nobody wanted to develop it. And there was always this FDA hurdle. And so with the world of the FDA, if you're the first one, you have the highest mountain to climb, and it is the hardest to do. And so there was this narrative of like, oh, women don't need that information. We shouldn't, do this regulatory hurdle. And so by us going through clearance, we basically opened the door to a bunch of this technology coming out and women having access to so much more information. And so I think it was a win for women in general. It took a small company like ours to just say, yep, we're going to do it, and take on that risk.
Yeah, and you did it. It's amazing.
Took quite a few tears and quite a few months, but yes, we did it.
Yep. So, and you've expanded from single hormone to comprehensive testing and now into supplements. What drove that evolution?
Yeah, yeah. So we started with the PDG, which was like that missing piece. And then we realized, to really have a good, solid system and know all the answers, we had to measure all four hormones across the whole menstrual cycle. So now we measure FSH to look for ovarian function and egg count. We look at estrogen, which is required to open the fertile window and to help the uterus get thick enough for the embryo. And then we measure LH, which releases the egg from the follicle, and then progesterone, which stabilizes for implantation. And so our test does all this amazing things. And we actually had a Facebook comment one time, which was like, actually prove I hate you because you're telling me all the things that are wrong with me, but you're not bringing me the solutions. And so that's when we started going into the solutions of supplements. And we now do prescription medications because like a typical ovulation test, you get an answer and, most couples have the means to just go time intercourse at home and they don't need external intervention. Whereas we're highlighting hormone imbalances and fertility issues that could impact your ability to get pregnant. Those solves are fertility medications, there's supplements, there's lifestyle changes, there's some additional blood work that maybe they can get done. It's going to the doctor and asking certain questions. And we found that not all doctors have the most up-to-date knowledge, and nor do they like at-home testing, or nor do they like their patient knowing anything that they don't know. And so there's a lot of pushback from new technology. Oh, I don't know what that is. I can't do anything because I don't know what it is. Or I don't believe it because you bought it off Amazon or something arbitrary. And so instead of trying to teach all the OBs and reproductive endocrinologists on our technology, we started offering those services directly. It was just a faster way to get women the things that they needed.
Yeah, definitely. And has that changed that education portion to OBs?
It has, but it's slow. The problem is we're dealing with an industry where the consumer is put last, and we wanted to put her first. She has the highest drive to get pregnant, to get answers, to get the right treatment, the right time. Everyone gets GLPs delivered to their house. Like, why can't we do that with fertility medications? We want access to information and medications and solutions. We don't want gatekeepers that may or may not have the right answer. At the end of the day, it's the consumer that has the highest need for this, and they were the ones that we had to reach.
Yeah. And the correlation between elevated progesterone levels and pregnancy success is striking. I saw 92% versus 19%. How did you discover this?
Well, we did a clinical study with the users of our test. And so we asked our users, do you want to be part of this study? We'll pay to include your data. Everything's anonymized. And if they said yes, we would include them. We asked a bunch of questions. And it turns out the cycle that they got pregnant, if you look at their PDG levels, the ones that got pregnant had high PDG levels. And then the ones that got pregnant but lost the pregnancy had low PDG levels. And so you can kind of say the higher amount of PDG, the higher chance you are going to have a successful pregnancy. And so you want to have high PDG levels. So if you don't have high PDG levels, it's not that you can't get pregnant. It's harder to get pregnant and it's harder to stay pregnant. And so what we try to do is optimize your PDG levels during your cycle. So that's either through lifestyle, supplements, medications, to really just increase chances. Women want to get pregnant now and they want it for the least cost possible. And so a treatment cycle with us is under $200. Whereas if they were to go to a treatment cycle, even with their OB, we're talking 3,000 plus dollars. So it's really trying to decrease that timeline, right? You don't have to wait 12 months to get treatment and you don't have to pay 3,000 plus dollars for those treatments.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. So, how is combining testing with your Insight app transform the user experience?
The hardest part is people in general don't get education about healthcare. They don't get education about their hormones, how to get pregnant. And we're told don't ever have unprotected sex. You'll get pregnant that time. It's just a thing that we lack. And so when you approach someone and you say, okay, we're going to measure 4 hormones across 17 days and it's going to be 45 hormone measures, their heads kind of explode. Like, I don't know what this is. And so what the app does is it tell me your period, tell me how long your cycles are. It tells them when to test, how to test, scans the results in, tells them what their hormone values are, tells them if they're within the optimal range, if they're higher, if they're lower. And at the end, it analyzes it and gives them a cycle, a report that says, here's your score, here's what this is, and these are your personalized recommendations off of your scores. We try to make it as easy as possible to not only get the data, but understand it. That is the hardest part is, anybody can get a test done at Quest and then you get this sheet back. You're like, I don't know what any of these things mean, what to do, where to go from this. And so I think that that's really our superpower is to turn all this hormone numbers into actionable insights and say, this is your next step. This is what you need to get pregnant.
Yeah, that's great. So, the app really helps with overcoming that challenge, making complex hormone science user friendly, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. What misconceptions about hormone testing have you had to address?
People see our test and they think, oh, it's just a fertile window tracker. My free app that I downloaded tells me when my fertile window is. Why would I pay money for this? And there's two problems with that. One is your app goes off of industry averages, which is usually about 80% wrong. And so you're probably not getting an accurate fertile window with your tracker app. And so measuring hormones will get you the most accurate, longest fertile window that you possibly can by measuring hormones directly. The second one, it's not just for timing. We will give you the fertile window, but you could also not be conceiving because of a lack of eggs, right? You don't have enough eggs left. You could be trying to ovulate, you don't actually ovulate, you don't actually release the egg. Or you could be releasing the egg, but you don't have a healthy luteal phase, which is when implantation occurs. And so these are things that need medications. And so I would say those are the two biggest misconceptions. We walk like a duck, you sit like a duck, whatever that saying is. You're a duck. Well, we're not a duck. We have other capabilities, but it's just kind of hard to explain in a one sentence as someone scrolling through their Instagram feed.
Not just a tracker, you're so much more. Um,
Exactly. Yes.
right. How do you balance providing actionable insights while ensuring users consult healthcare providers?
Everything is like personalized and we try to give people options. People are just not healthy. It's general. We're not healthy. There's many ways to fix it, right? You can take medications or you can take supplements or you can change your diet and your entire lifestyle and you can remove plastics and all these different things. And they have different timelines associated to them, right? And so a lot of times women have been so struggling for so long and they're just at the end of their rope. They just want, give me the medical band-aid, just give me the medication, let me get pregnant. And, great, we have these solutions for you. Other times I don't want to get pregnant for 2 years. I really am just trying to fix myself and understand. And they want to go the supplement route and the like just really healing their body type of thing. And so we like to provide different options for where she is. We want to meet her where she is and provide solutions. There's no one size fits all for every single person. And so we know there's many ways to move forward and try to be the best resources we can and give her as many options as she can.
So, on another note, what challenges do you face raising awareness about your brand and products?
I think it's the same. It's pretty easy to say most accurate fertile window tracker, and a lot of people kind of understand what that means. We have the most accurate fertile window tracker, and we can help diagnose ovulatory issues. We have a sperm test that helps a male partner. Like we're an all-in kind of fertility thing. It really takes 2, 3 minutes looking through the site or somebody watching like a minute and a half video to really understand what Proov stands for. And it's just really hard to reach people in that because they're just constantly scrolling or they have these misconceptions. They say we're like the first protein bar in a world of granola bars. And it was so hard to teach people the different value prop of a protein bar versus just a granola bar.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly a challenge. So, what are your main growth targets for 2025?
So our biggest section of growth is actually expanding into a other part of women's health that's often misunderstood, which is that perimenopause menopause transition. And so we've been helping women get pregnant for about 8, 9 years, and we've learned certain hormone patterns. And what we're learning is these hormone patterns are just first stages of perimenopause because our core consumer is about 35, 38. And that's where you start to see this hormone shift into perimenopause. And so we're expanding our offering into understanding hormones as, a 35-year-old woman going through the hormone changes. How do you own your hormones, know what's going on, and use it to manage your symptoms throughout the process? Because open up your TikTok feed, and there's a billion people talking about different menopause things, and they're all contradictory to each other. And so if we can help her understand her hormones and what's going on within her body, then she can start thinking about, okay, I need this or that, or I need to talk to this kind of doctor, or I need this kind of supplement.
Yeah. I understand you also recently launched couples testing. What opportunities do you see there?
Yeah, most women think it's they take the whole onus on themselves. It's, oh, I have time intercourse. We didn't get pregnant. Maybe it's me. I'm gonna take these supplements. I'm gonna do all these things. Embryo, a baby is half the female and half the male, right? You need two people to create that. And a lot of times the male partner is just not in the equation. They're just not thought about, it's just like as an afterthought, right? And so if you can bring him into the conversation sooner and just either check it off or get him on supplements, do it together, take your vitamins together, those types of things. And so we partner with a company that provides us a sperm test, and it's really, really cool. It's this little microscope. You take a sample at home, like put this little like liquefying agent on there, stick it on this little slide, wait a few minutes, and you get a video of the sperm swimming across the screen. And then it scores everything and it gets this really cute report where there's like red, yellow, green. So you know kind of where you sit. But it's fantastic. I mean, men don't want to do it. And frankly, I wouldn't either. I mean, they have to go to the like right by the nurse's station where everyone's talking outside and you got dirty magazines and a gross seat. Like sounds horrible. So bringing it at home within the comfort and then having a cool video to watch, I think transformational for a lot of couples to really just there is a male side. We could do this together. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is. Um, and your affiliate and influencer programs are robust too. I see that. I'm wondering how important community driven growth is.
Yeah, community is really important. It's something that we started when we first started the company was how do you create a safe space for women to talk to each other about these types of things? This women's health, menstrual cycle issues, fertility issues, it's not something that you want to talk to your family or your close friends about. And so you find a new community. And so we have a lot of education. People who've used the product before talk about it, help new users understand it. And right now that lives on Facebook.
Yeah, that's cool. How are you currently getting most of your new customers?
Right now, it's a lot of the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, a little bit Instagram, I guess. But like I said, it's a really hard topic to explain. And so having video content, even 30 seconds of video, has been amazing. Women understand what the product actually does and how it's different and how it can be really helpful to them during their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Get into the sound bites. So, what innovations and hormone testing excite you the most?
We're still at this infancy. We just invented a new type of test 5 years ago, and we're building databases of these hormone patterns that will really eventually lead to the unlock of many things. And think of a world where 85% of women have problems with their period. It's heavy periods, painful periods, non-existent periods, anything from endometriosis, PCOS, infertility, menopause. It just affects women, and we're leaving the workplace, we're missing work, we're not functioning at our height. And so if there is a way where we can just pee on a stick for a month and put it into this machine that knows about hormones, and it can say, you have X, Y, and Z and need ABC, and then they can just have a healthy, normal menstrual cycle and not be kind of a crutch anymore. That's what I get most excited about. So we're working towards that. We're not there, but we're working towards it.
Yeah. Well, I hope that comes very soon. What role do you think AI plays in the future of hormone testing?
Yeah, I think if you're taking 45 hormone measures, you're taking age, you're taking biometric data, you're taking so many data points that it's impossible for a human to go through and find those patterns. That's where the AI is the most helpful, is to really just see the patterns and start typing things and pulling things down, and then we have a human layer on top that goes, oh, the AI pulled out this and this, and that's going to be able to use huge data sets that before AI was almost impossible to get any meaningful data out of.
Yeah. Well, it's really amazing that we can do that now. So, if we were to have this conversation in 5 years, what impact do you hope Proof will have made?
I hope that, the majority of women know what Proov is, and, whenever they have a problem, they can just know that they can come pick up the test, take it, and learn that they don't have to struggle years with infertility. They don't have to suffer years with symptoms, heavy periods, painful periods, right? That there's this thing that they can do. A lot of stuff is preventative, right? When you get old enough, you do cancer screening, you do the colon cancer screening, you do the breast cancer screening. And so I think living in a world where healthcare is more proactive, and it's instead of waiting until you have infertility or some problem, being able to kind of beat it or like take mild symptoms, make go away so you don't have to get anything chronic. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That's it for today's episode of A Healthier, Happier You, the people working to make it happen. A huge thank you to Dr. Amy Beckley for sharing her insights and amazing work Prove is doing to help people live healthier, happier lives. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit. And if your brand or business making impact in health, wellness, or personal care, we'd love to help you grow. Connect with me at luxhammer.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay healthy, stay happy, and keep making a difference.